voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silence, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence the small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Great to have everybody here. We survived another day. So much going on tonight. We have a feature interview coming up with Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada. We are going to talk to him about a lot of things. 51st state, tariffs, Ukraine. We have lots to chat about, and the upcoming federal election, and that, of course, is top of mind for a lot of people, including Mark Carney, the newly coronated Liberal leader and Prime Minister designate, who met with Justin Trudeau today. We'll show you what happened there and talk about that. Also, breaking news off the coast of England, a jet fuel tanker that supplies the U.S. military has collided with a cargo ship. It's on fire. An investigation will need to be done. All kinds of rumors, speculation. We'll try to stick to the facts with regard to that story tonight, as we always try to, so that we don't go down any side roads and get you confused and mixed up with information that might not be factual. We'll try to assess things in an accurate way. Also, Marco Rubio has arrived over in Saudi Arabia for upcoming peace talks. Markets are crashing. Not a good sign. All of that because of turmoil created by the one, the only, Donald J. Trump, El Presidente of the United States of Mexico. I mean, America. Hard to keep things straight. You don't know what's real, what isn't. You're not sure what to call things anymore. You know? And that's where Bernie Sanders comes in, because he's been on the speakers, on a kind of a tour, speaking, giving speeches. And he's been giving barn burners of speeches, just ripping into Trump in an amazing way. And his words are really resonating with people, because it looks like a lot of folks have buyer's remorse with Mr. Trump. And the crowds are growing at these Bernie Sanders events. We'll show you what that's all about tonight as well, as Bernie talks to us about the big lie. Stay with me. There's a lot to unpack tonight.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
All right, let's get straight to the tanker fire. Here's video. So, just before 10 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, this is a Portuguese flag cargo ship. Salong slammed into the U.S. flag tanker Stena Immaculate. And as you can see, it's on fire. We'll just pause the video there so you can see the still. It's not a long clip anyway. And the tanker was carrying jet fuel for the U.S. military as part of the tanker security program, sustained a ruptured cargo tank, sending fuel spilling into the sea and triggering multiple explosions. Thick black smoke, as you can see, and flames have been visible for hours now, with both vessels still ablaze as of this moment. And we're getting more information coming in by the minute here from the British Coast Guard. A major rescue operation sprang into action following the collision, involving lifeboats, a Coast Guard helicopter, and nearby vessels with firefighting capabilities. 37 crew members on board across both ships. 36 have been safely brought ashore. One was hospitalized, but one crew member from the Salong remains missing. The search for that individual has now been called off. Adding to the tension, the Salong was carrying 15 containers of sodium cyanide, a highly toxic chemical. It's still unclear if any has leaked into the water, but experts warn that if it has, it could release dangerous hydrogen cyanide gas, posing risks to rescuers and marine life. Meanwhile, jet fuel continues to pour into the North Sea near busy fishing grounds and seabird colonies. Scientists say the environmental impact from this may be less severe than a crude oil spill, though, as jet fuel evaporates quickly, but Greenpeace UK is calling it extremely concerning, noting the potential for toxic hazards. And as I said earlier, the cause of this collision does remain under investigation, with details still emerging, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's office says it's a priority, and the UK's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency is assessing the spill response. For now, a 5-mile exclusion zone surrounds the site as the world watches this fiery disaster unfold. So we'll try to stay up to date and keep you up to date with this story, and if new details emerge through the evening, we will share those details with you. Now, also, overseas, moving on to Saudi Arabia, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, arriving in Saudi Arabia. So he arrived here this afternoon, joined by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and President Trump's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for these high-stakes discussions with Ukrainian officials. And let me pull this down. So these talks are happening now 3 weeks after U.S. and Russian delegations met in Riyadh with Ukraine, noticeably absent from that round. And this time, a Ukrainian team led by Zelensky's top aide is in Jeddah, signaling Kyiv's readiness to engage. Zelensky himself is in Saudi Arabia too, meeting separately with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh, though he won't attend the U.S.-Ukraine talks directly. Of course, Donald Trump doing things in a very unorthodox fashion, saying he is pressing for a swift resolution to the now 3-year-old plus conflict. which has stalled into a grueling stalemate. And Rubio is saying that he hopes Ukraine will commit to what he's saying are difficult steps for peace, hinting that U.S. military aid, which was recently suspended after that dust-up in the Oval Office between Zelensky and Trump and J.D. Vance, saying that U.S. military aid could be suspended or could resume if these talks succeed. We'll see. Sources say that the goal here is to hammer out a framework for a ceasefire, though the details on that remain pretty sparse. Rubio is also expected to meet the Saudi Crown Prince tomorrow to strengthen U.S.-Saudi ties as they play diplomacy on the world stage for all to see. Now, I'll tell you, Donald Trump has turned the world upside down, inside out. And a lot of people are wondering about his methods and even his real motives and and even his loyalty. I mean, Trump talks about loyalty, right? He seems to value loyalty above all. But what he has displayed this past week is that he is really not loyal to the traditional U.S. allies at all, cutting off intelligence. And I cannot tell you tonight how serious the situation in Kursk is. We know that because they cut off intelligence, they left Ukrainian forces blind. As a result, Russian soldiers were able to make their way through pipelines, come out the other side, flank the Ukrainians, and over the past few days they have been inflicting high casualties on Ukrainian forces. But we do also know Ukraine has been able to fight back. But I'm seeing so much conflicting information regarding this, I really don't know what the truth is. And when I say truth, I mean the scale one way or the other. Because the word out of, from the Russian blogosphere is that the Ukrainians are surrounded, it's hopeless, they've suffered serious losses. We know that they have suffered serious losses, and that the Russian bloggers out there are saying that the Ukrainian troops are trapped and maybe slaughtered, those who are left, because it looks like it has been a slaughter to some degree. But they're not, they're still alive in there. They are still fighting in spite of what Donald Trump has done. And I would say that what Donald Trump did was cruel. Completely lacking in morality, because I'm flabbergasted. But Ukraine is saying tonight that their units there are not currently under threat of encirclement in the Kursk Oblast, and it looks like they, but again, I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see what emerges over time, because both sides are putting out information that I can't verify, so I don't know how serious it is. I will say that cutting off the intelligence is akin to an act of sabotage. If Russia had infiltrated Ukrainian forces and Ukrainian intelligence had managed to, in some way, just inject a virus into the computer system or turn off the power, flip a switch take out all the satellites, it would have been the equivalent of that. It blows my mind that Donald Trump and his administration would order such a thing and leave soldiers high and dry like that. It's you don't do that. It's completely unethical. It's immoral. It's evil. It's evil. Thousands of soldiers have died as a result of his actions because they were left defenseless, and it encouraged the Russians to take action. They couldn't have done it better themselves. So you can assess it any way you want, but it looks to me like Donald Trump has gone to war with Ukraine and has joined Russia, and it's bizarre. Bizarre. But the Ukrainians are not giving up. Here's former British Colonel Hamish de Breton Gordon on Times Radio addressing this. And yeah, I think he is as shocked as anybody. Let's get his assessment of this situation tonight.
Hamish, Ukraine are reportedly trying to propose a sea and air ceasefire when Zelensky meets in Saudi Arabia today and when negotiations with the U.S. continue this week. But Trump says that he wants the killing to stop, right? He says he wants peace. There's too many people dying. He throws around various numbers, whether they're accurate or not. But if he wants peace to happen, if he wants killing to stop, why wouldn't he ask Putin to at least pause bombing if they have such a great relationship until a deal is struck? Ukraine is still being attacked on the daily. For instance, on Sunday alone, Russian forces retook 3 settlements in Kursk.
Well, it is extraordinary. As you say, Trump wants the killing to stop, but actually what he has done in the last week by stopping US military aid and switching off US intelligence assets has actually increased the killing, because it's blinded Ukraine to a lot of the attacks that have been happening. First of all, the attacks in the Kursk region, where Russia has made considerable gains, and also the attacks by drones and missiles on civilian targets. And as you've articulated, a lot of Ukraine civilians have been killed over the last few days and the last week. And a lot of that is attributed to the fact that American surveillance and tracking assets are no longer available to Ukraine at the moment. So actually what Trump is saying and the effect of the actions he's making is making it more likely that the killing will increase and continue. And absolutely, he is only directing his decisions at Kyiv and Zelensky and the Ukrainians at the moment to make their fighting much more difficult, whereas actually the people who are creating the casualties in the main are the Russians, and he seems to have, left them completely unfettered, which is, it's very difficult to understand. And if one put Putin into Trump's position at the moment, you cannot think that he would do anything differently.
Absolutely disgusting. And Trump, with his bluster about Putin better get to the table to negotiate right away, or I'm going to impose tariffs and sanctions. It's just complete. It's a facade. When was the last time you bought anything made in Russia? How much trade does the United States even do with Russia? It's like minuscule, almost nothing. So what effect would tariffs have on Russia? Nothing. It was just rhetoric for public consumption to make it look like he was being in some way even-handed. And the sanctions? He's already sanctioned as much as he can sanction. The banks are all sanctioned. I don't think there's anything else he can sanction. So he can sanction more if he wants to, but it won't have any impact. And tariffs on Russia, no impact. Zero. It's irrelevant. It was just him flapping his gums to make it look like he wasn't taking sides when he clearly is. It's just a cover. Bizarre and sick and twisted and evil. And that's not an exaggeration. Absolutely disgusting. We will follow all of this, obviously, in the days ahead, hours ahead, minutes ahead, and we'll keep you up to date. Let's take a little break. There's a lot more to cover. And Maxime Bernier is coming up shortly for our feature interview tonight, leader of the People's Party of Canada. Right here on Maverick News. Stay with us.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV.
The entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
All right, we're back, and of course we saw Mark Carney coronated new Liberal leader, Prime Minister designate, and so the former Bank of Canada governor is going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, and this was sort of his first day on the job, and he went to see Justin Trudeau to talk about the transition. Here's Mark Carney after the meeting.
Just had a long meeting with the Prime Minister. We discussed the most important issues for our country, obviously including Canada and U.S. relations, issues of national security, and yes, the transition between the Prime Minister and myself. That transition will be seamless and it will be quick. Finally, I, as you may have heard, just had a meeting with the caucus. There is tremendous energy in the Liberal caucus. As you saw last evening, this is a united party with full of energy to serve Canadians. C'est pas en ce qui concerne Monsieur le Président Trump, c'est pas le moment. Je suis pas encore Premier ministre du Canada, et ça va arriver.
I just wondered about Donald Trump.
Okay, sorry.
What would you say?
First thing, I'm sure he's not going to sign an order directed at me, David. With respect to President Trump, I'm not yet Prime Minister. His interlocutor is Prime Minister Trudeau, and I look forward to the opportunity.
When are you going to be sworn in?
We will. As I said, I just spoke with the Prime Minister at length on issues around the transition. It'll be quick. We'll be coming back to you soon. The good news is that you will be seeing probably more of me than you want, and you will have other opportunities, and we'll be making an announcement on that.
Exactly.
Last question, what did you tell caucus today?
What did I tell caucus today? So this is important. The first thing, I went to caucus today because you start as you mean to go on. And we are a Liberal team, and so it's incredibly important for me to hear directly from the members of caucus the concerns of Canadians on the ground, their priorities. As I said last night, they're the voices of their communities and they're the conscience of the party. There's tremendous energy in that group. We know this is a crucial time for our country. We're united to serve Canadians, and we will build this country.
And where will you run?
Okay.
Peel as a Canadian government.
So, Carney, ready to assume power. And I have to be honest, I'm getting tired. This is a personal note. I'm just getting tired of the sensational reactions, the sensationalism surrounding so much in politics right now, the clickbait, the half-truths designed to generate an emotional response from people. Case in point, the whole Carney has never been elected, say goodbye to democracy. This coming from mostly conservatives. I understand what you're saying, but the people saying this either have no knowledge of the system, history, or they're just saying these things because they know they're going to get clicks, a response, get people jacked up. The reason I say this is it's not like this is not the first time this has happened in Canada. For example, Kim Campbell. Does anybody remember Kim Campbell? Canada's first woman prime minister. She came to power the same way. But she was a conservative. People are not even mentioning that. She became the prime minister back. She followed Brian Mulroney, who was the prime minister. He'd been prime minister from about 84 to 1993. And he was suffering from declining popularity, a lot of issues. This was after Meech Lake and the Charlottetown Accords and the free trade deals, and they had been in power nearly a decade. And Kim Campbell, so he stepped down. He said he was stepping down as prime minister. And just like Trudeau, he said he was stepping down, but then he stuck around for a transition period while the leadership race took place. And Kim Campbell threw her hat into the ring, and she managed to win on the second ballot, I believe. It wasn't like Carney's coronation with what did he win the leadership with yesterday? Was it like 85% of the vote or something? And I joked, I said it was like it was the kind of election or that you would see Vladimir Putin have. That's pretty incredible. But anyway, Campbell back in 93 won with about, I think it was only like 52, 53%. And then she was prime minister. That made her the prime minister. And then Mulroney stepped aside. She took over. And then people, people are freaking out. They're saying, oh, Trudeau's going to come back. And how many people were saying that? He's going to stay on as prime minister. And no, he's not. He's not going to stay on as prime minister. And we are going to have an election fairly soon. That's what happened with Kim Campbell. She was only prime minister for a few months. And I don't know why, but I just remember this stuck in my mind. She went to a Toronto Blue Jays baseball game, and I think she threw out the first pitch. That's the thing that sticks in my mind most about Kim Campbell. That was the one event. And I think she ended up on the cover of Maclean's magazine. Or maybe there was just a big cover, just a big article about her being the first female prime minister. But within a few months, they went to the polls, an election was held, and the Conservatives were defeated terribly. I think they only ended up with a couple of seats. They were just destroyed in the election. They lost official party status, as I recall, in that election. And it just shows you that things can change very quickly. The fortunes of a party, the political winds can start blowing in the other direction, and turn everything on a dime. And that's when Jean Chrétien was elected to the office. The little guy from Shawinigan, who made an appearance at the Liberal Leadership Convention yesterday and spoke. Do I have that clip? I think I do. I think I do here somewhere. Let me see. If I can share it with you. Where'd you go, Jean? Maybe I lost it. Well, he stood up. Chrétien yesterday had words for Donald Trump. Oh, here it is. I've got it. Let me share this with you. I don't know if maybe I'm just getting old. Does anybody remember Jean Chrétien? He was Pierre Trudeau's finance minister. Minister of Indian Affairs. Held a lot of
portfolios. If I had treated anyone the way that the president treated my prime minister and the president in Ukraine in the last few weeks. We are proud Canadians, and yes, we owe a debt of recognition to Mr. Trump. He has united us as never before. So I want to say thank you to him, and I think I will propose him for the Order of Canada.
That's funny.
I'm just kidding.
That is funny. That's pretty darn funny. Okay. I need to take a little break here, but I shall return. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, almost ready. Getting some stuff queued up here. Hang on.
Maverick News. fighting for freedom.
Yeah, just a couple of other notes here. Situation in Syria is not good. When we saw Assad overthrown, I think some people were hopeful that you might get more stability and a more humane government in place, but that's not what's happening. There has been a whole wave of violence that has killed hundreds of civilians across Syria in recent days. And we've got serious fighting going on in Damascus, the capital, and in Aleppo as well. Do you remember? I think it was leading. I think it was leading up to Trump's first presidency, and he was asked about Aleppo, and he didn't know what it was. Blew my mind. This is a guy is in charge of the biggest nuclear arsenal on the planet. Anyway, yeah, so more than 1,300 people were killed in Syria over 3 days through late Sunday, mostly civilians. And we're continuing to watch that as well. There's just serious, what a mess Syria is. I don't even want to get into all of the details on which forces are which and who's fighting whom and how the Americans are involved. It's just a mess. The stock market's a mess too because of Donald Trump. We saw major stock indexes tank today. It continues a sell-off that gathered steam last week. Investors are rattled. And we're seeing this significant fall-off in U.S. growth because we're seeing ongoing inflation and a job market that is unstable. So the S&P 500 index was down 2.7% today. And we're seeing the downward pressure extend over into the NASDAQ. It fell 4%. Some calling it a correction. And it's down more than 10% from recent highs. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 900 points, almost 2.1%. And it's still sliding. This is all because of fears of a recession, because of the tariffs, the trade war, the economic policies of President Trump. Something doesn't feel right. Everything feels off. You can see it in the price of Bitcoin too. I'm going to check again here. It was down below 80,000 US today. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was up at like 106,000 US. Here. Yeah, it's down below, still below 80,000 as we speak. $79,090.75 USD for Bitcoin. And just the graph tells the story. This is one day. This is over the past month. Here we had it up at 98,000 back on February 11th. And 79,000 today. Go back to 6 months. We hit a peak there of 105,000. 106 back in December. And now we're all the way back down to 79,000. That's a loss of confidence in the economy, the U.S. economy, the economies of Western society. Yeah, not looking good. Still checking that tanker fire. Okay, and Elon Musk, Fox News, saying that Doge continues to uncover all kinds of fraud. Let's get this latest clip. He was interviewed over on Fox News by Larry Kudlow. Here we go.
What we're adding here is caring and competence. And there's a massive amount of fraud of basically people submitting Social Security numbers for Social Security benefits, unemployment, Small Business Administration loans, and medical, where those are fake Social Security numbers, or they've stolen somebody else's Social Security number, and we're trying to put a stop to all of that. And that's the number which is estimated to be on the order of 10% of federal expenditures, which is, half a $1 trillion. What we're adding here.
That's what he's saying, although a lot of the numbers being thrown around are being challenged, especially all those numbers about people who are 200 years old receiving Social Security checks. As I indicated a few nights ago, a lot of that information is misleading because it has been reported before in prior administrations. It's just that stuff is in the database, but the people there listed, the dead people, they're not actually receiving the checks. It's just that data hasn't been purged from the system, cleaned out, because it was labor intensive, and it just hasn't been done because of the costs of the labor, I guess, involved. Maybe Musk is getting to that stuff, but it seems pretty clear to me that there's some exaggeration, maybe even some lying going on somewhere along the line. Somebody ain't telling the truth, because we're getting two totally different kinds of stories, and that's where Bernie Sanders comes in. He's been on the circuit speaking and drawing really big crowds. Was it over the weekend he was in Michigan speaking? Got a huge crowd there. And this is his most recent speech, I believe, in Altoona, Wisconsin. And the messaging, the same in Altoona as it was in Michigan. I think he just keeps hammering on the same themes. This to me, these rallies, they feel sort of like, it looks like he's doing in his own way, his own version of these campaign rallies that Trump was doing, even after he lost the last election, only to come back and win this election. He kept on campaigning all the way through. Well, Bernie Sanders, this has a campaign feel to it, definitely. All right. And the messaging here is that what we're getting today is we're being assaulted. I talk about it a lot. Propaganda, psychological warfare, the information war. And in these speeches, Bernie Sanders is kind of really nailing the issue down to explain what is going on in very simple, easy to understand terms. Now, all politicians lie. There's lying going on both sides, but what he's talking about here is the big lie. That's the way he refers to this, the big lie. And I think what he says has real merit. We should be listening to this because he's warning us that through social media, through technology, through new psychological warfare techniques, we are all being targeted, and we are all very vulnerable to manipulation. Here's Bernie Sanders in Altoona.
Now, I was, the other day on Tuesday, at Trump's State of the Union. It's my job, I went. And what was very interesting, and it's important to pay attention to this, Trump spoke for 100 minutes. I think it was the longest State of the Union ever. And what he did is created, I think, a parallel universe. What these guys do, which is, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the politicians don't lie. Politicians always have lied, and they always have stretched the truth. That's the nature of the game. But what we're seeing now is something very different than what we have seen in the past. It's one thing to stretch the truth, to fib a little bit here. But we are now looking at the phenomenon of the big lie. You all know what that means? What a big lie is about is you say something absurd that is blatantly false, and you say it over and over and over again without shame. Just to give you a few examples, just a few. Trump claimed that the 2020 election was stolen from him and that he won by a landslide. That's a lie. And it's a lie, think about what that lie means. It's to cast doubts on the way we do elections in America. Why do I want to bother to vote? Why do I want to participate in democracy if somebody's going to steal the election? That's what that's about. Trump has claimed that the January 6th insurrection, where people were trying to deny Biden from becoming president, he claimed that that insurrection was a day of love. A lie. And then this great lover of law and order pardoned all these people who injured over 100 police officers on Capitol Hill. Trump has claimed again, trying to destroy faith in the democratic process. He has claimed that millions of undocumented people vote in American elections. A lie. He has claimed that climate change is a hoax originating in China. And then more recently, he has claimed that Ukraine started the horrific war with Russia. But it was not just Trump. A couple of months ago, and I had worked very hard. I was chairman of a committee called the Health, Education, Labor Committee, and we worked really hard on some public health programs which would have expanded funding for community health centers, would have lowered the cost of prescription drugs as part of a bigger bill called the Continuing Resolution. Democrats, Republicans worked really hard for months. Literally, the day when Congress and the House was going to vote on this, Musk started putting out emails on his Twitter platform, and he said, members of Congress, don't vote for this legislation. It's terrible. It will give members of Congress a 40% increase in their salaries. 40%. Total lie. It was a 3.4% increase. And as a result of what Musk did, that important legislation was defeated. And just last week at his speech, the president repeated the claim that Musk started, that zillions, you all heard, zillions of dead people between the ages of 100 and 500 are collecting Social Security checks. Total, and what is the reason for doing that? You tell me. Why do you do that? Hold on, raise your hand. Somebody raise their hand. Yeah, why? Good, exactly. Young man here said, put down in Social Security. Look, if you're standing out there and somebody says, well, the whole system is broken, people are 200 years old collecting Social Security, massive fraud, people say, Jesus, do we really want to keep the system? That is the purpose. So let's be clear. Well over 99% of Social Security checks are going out to people who earned those checks. Social Security has been the most successful and popular program in American history. It's a program that has kept millions of seniors from poverty. We're not going to let them destroy Social Security. What these guys are trying to do when they lie and lie and lie, they create a situation in which instead of having serious and honest discussion, people have different points of view. What do we do about Social Security? What do we do about health care? What do we do about education? Important issues. What we end up spending half our lives doing is not discussing those issues, but we end up trying to respond to these absolute lies. Now, I want you to think back. I don't know how many of you saw Trump's speech, but if you listened hard to his State of the Union speech, what you observed is that, in fact, he had relatively little to say about the State of the Union. Almost nothing. You know, when you talk about the State of the Union, what it is, okay, what is going on? What's going on in the country? You know, what are the needs of the people? What kind of pain are we seeing? How do we respond? That's what you do. People can disagree, but that's what you do. Unbelievably, Trump spoke for 100 minutes, and he almost completely ignored the issues that are keeping millions of working class people up at night as they worry about how their families are going to survive in these very difficult times. Now, let us, this afternoon, do something really radical. You ready? Let us actually do what Trump did not do, and that is take a look at what is going on in our country, especially for working families. Let's start off with the sad reality that in the richest country in the history of the world, today, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about? I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. And the environment that I grew up in, the life that I had, has shaped who I am as a person and, in fact, my political views. It means, you know what? I'm going to tell you what living paycheck to paycheck, but you know it better than I do. Raise your hand. What is it like living paycheck to paycheck? Who wants to? All right, hold on, one at a time. I can't. Yes. Well, terrible, all right? Yes. Hungry? Hunger. All right, let me get some hands back there. Be loud. We got a hand there. Okay, ma'am. Stressful. Stay on that issue, sir. You're not sure if you're going to be able to keep the heat on. Yes, ma'am. Trying to find a way to plan a meal for until your next paycheck comes. Ma'am? Forget about buying shoes and clothes for your kids. Ma'am? Skipping doctor's visits. Okay, I see a hand back there. Sir, yeah. Fear that your world is going to fall apart. Sir. Am I getting glasses, or can I get them for my kids? Sir. Can't plan for the future. Hand back there, sir. Okay, psychological warfare. Yes. You make impossible decisions for your family, sir. General insecurity. Okay, I think you got it. So let me just tell you something on a personal level. My mom died young. Her dream, we lived in an apartment our whole lives, rent-controlled apartment. Her dream, what she wanted more than anything, was to own our own house. And we never achieved that. We didn't have the money to own our own house, and other things. Today in America, we live as a nation shorter lives than people in other wealthy countries. Our life expectancy is low. Do you all know that? So we live about 4 years shorter lives than people in Europe or Japan, etc. And that's bad. But I'm going to tell you something that is even worse, that is almost never discussed at all. And that is, if you are working class in the United States of America, you live 7 years shorter life on average than do wealthy people. In other words, and I'm not just talking about poor people who are living out on the street. They don't live very long. I'm talking about working class in general. 7 years shorter lives than the people on top. Why is that? Help me out here. All right, you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing the word stress. All right? All right, and that's what a lot of your responses were. It deals with stress. What does it mean? And we heard this just now. If you're worried about whether or not you can buy shoes for your kids. What does it mean if you're worried that your landlord's going to raise the rent and you can't afford to pay that rent? Where are you going to live? What does it mean if your car breaks down and you got a $1,000 repair bill, but you can't afford the $1,000? You don't have a car, you can't get to work. And what happens if you can't get to work? What does it mean if your kid says, "Mom, I'm sick," and you can't afford to take her to the doctor? You add all of that up. What does it mean if your boss tells you, "Guess what, you're working the midnight shift because you don't have a regular schedule"? You add all of that stuff up, that economic pressure. How do I survive? It wreaks havoc on our bodies and it wreaks havoc on our minds. If we were a poor country, I would come before you and give you a very different speech. I'd say, "Hey, look, I'm sorry, we're poor. We can't afford decent education, can't afford decent health care, can't afford to protect the environment." I want you never to forget, we are the richest country in the history of the world. There is no excuse for people dying young because of that stress. Now, not only, of course, did Trump not deal with that reality, unbelievably, 100-minute speech, he didn't say one word about health care. How many of you think the health care system in America works well? Well, you're right. We are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the people of any other nation. 85 million are uninsured or underinsured. 60,000 people die every year because they don't get to a doctor when they should. Somehow or another, Mr. Trump forgot to talk about health care. Maybe it has to do with the fact that he didn't want to antagonize his friends in the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. You all know that? Sometimes 10 times more than what Canadians or Europeans are paying. I didn't hear one word from the president dealing with the reality that 1 out of 4 Americans can't afford the prescriptions their doctors prescribe. Amazingly enough, in Vermont, I don't know about here, we have a major housing crisis. You got 800,000 Americans are homeless, and we got 20 million people spending more than 50% of their limited incomes on housing. So if you're spending 50%, what do you got left? Not much, all right?
Can't wait to join and become the 51st state.
Not one word on the housing crisis. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. Not one word from the president on that. Not one word on the fact that the 3 richest guys in the country were standing right behind them own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Got that? And needless to say, the president had nothing to say about the existential threat of climate change other than drill, baby, drill, which will make a dangerous situation even worse. But it is not only domestic policies that Trump is doing us wrong by. Let's take a look at what's going on internationally. You know, we all grew up understanding that America is the longest standing democracy in the history of the world. And we're proud of that. And I'm not here to tell you that our foreign policy has always been right. It has not. But at the end of the day, for people all over the world, the truth is they did look to the United States. They read our Declaration of Independence. They read our Constitution, which is a really extraordinary document being, written in the 18th century. They looked to America as a nation of democracy and freedom. And for the first time in the history of our country, we have a president who is allying himself with a ruthless dictator in Russia. And not only that, this is an issue I have paid a lot of attention to, maybe differences of opinion here, but I have very strongly opposed the U.S. giving military aid to the Netanyahu government in Israel. Trump wants to continue the very dumb policies that Biden had and provide more money for Netanyahu. I'm going to do whatever I can with other members of the Senate to stop more arms sales going to Israel. And also, when you think about who we are as a people, and we are proud of our democratic heritage, we're proud of our generosity, who we are as a people. If you can believe it, Trump is now telling the 2.2 million people who are in Gaza, who have suffered horribly, 45,000 dead, mostly women and kids, whole infrastructure wiped out, over 100,000 wounded. And you know what he's telling them now? You have to leave your homeland because we want to build a playground, a Riviera for the rich. That is almost unspeakable. Now, let me just say that it is not good enough for us to be on the defense fighting Trump and Musk every step of the way. We got to do that, but we have to do something more, and that is get on the offense. And by that, what do I mean by that? The truth of the matter is, you may not see it on TV or read it in the papers. But the truth of the matter is, and we polled on this a dozen times, the American people want fundamental changes in the way government does business. They want a government that works for them, not the billionaire class. So let me very briefly tell you something that is not Bernie Sanders' idea, not your idea. It's ideas supported by the overwhelming majority of the American people, Democrats, Republicans, independents. Number one, the American people want to end the corrupt campaign finance system that we have. Does anybody in America believe that it is appropriate for somebody like Musk to contribute $270 million to Trump's campaign, and then you get rewarded by becoming the most important man in government? But I got to tell you, it is not just Musk and Republicans, it is Democratic billionaires as well.
And they say they got the freest nation
We
on
are
earth.
not going to make progress on the issues facing working families unless we have campaign finance reform, unless we get rid of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. And unless we move to public funding of elections. You know what else the American people think? They don't think we should be giving tax breaks to billionaires. And at a time when millions of people all over our country are working for starvation wages, the American people want us to end this absurdity of having a 7.25 federal government minimum wage, raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $17 an hour. Do we have any union members here? Okay. All over this country, workers increasingly understand that if they're going to get decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions, they've got to join a union. And millions of people want to join unions, but they're running against corporate opposition. If you want to join a union, you're going to get fired. You're going to be taken into a back room, be lectured about how terrible unions are. You're going to be threatened. Vote for a union. We're taking this plant to China. All of that stuff is illegal, but they get away with it. That is why we got to pass legislation I just introduced, the PRO Act, punishing those corporations who act illegally when workers are trying to form unions.
That's what we saw with Amazon up in Montreal.
And here's something else the American people understand. Right now, 22% of seniors are living on $15,000 a year or less. Can you believe that? 50% of seniors are living on $30,000 or less. No, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. And here's an issue that the American people also understand. There is something fundamentally wrong when we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right.
Okay. All right. So for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You've got Trump in office, and that's a big action. And now you're getting reaction in America and around the world. And that's why Sanders is drawing crowds that are growing in size. Yeah. That's a big, big reaction, and it hasn't taken long. Yeah, just over a month. So look for the divide to deepen in America. Not in the years ahead, but in the days ahead. This is just as fast as Trump moves, as fast as he acts, you're going to get an equal and opposite reaction at an equal and opposite pace, I think. Stay with me. On the other side of this, Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada, will join us.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Max, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It's a privilege.
I'm very happy, very pleased to be with you. Thank you.
So give me your reaction to Mark Carney's coronation yesterday.
Yeah, they decided to elect the globalist in chief. For me, Carney, it's not about our country. What he did when he was with the UN, tried to push the UN climate change agenda and also the net zero philosophy. So for him, climate change is a big challenge, and that's not, there's no climate emergency. Actually, I hope that he will be able to call an election as soon as possible. We need an election. We are ready. We at the People's Party of Canada, and for him, Trump is the enemy of our country. I don't think so. What President Trump wants is just for us to reopen the free trade agreement that we have with Mexico, U.S., and us. It's supposed to be reopened in 2026. And with the tariffs, I believe that Trump is telling us, come at the table, sit with us. We will reopen the free trade agreement right now. And we must do that and put everything on the table, including the cartel in supply management, including the automobile industry. So let's have a deal. And actually, I know that it can be tough for us, but Carney is like Polyev on the tariffs. They're saying, we love you so much, Canadians, we, Polyev and Carney, that we will tax you more. And that's the position of Carney, like Trudeau, more tariffs. And the tariffs are, they will be paid by us, by Canadians, not by U.S. consumers, not by U.S. businesses. The 25% that Trudeau did impose, he did impose that on us. So, and Carney is okay with that. So for me, Carney and Polyev are not working in the best interest of our country.
The tariffs being imposed on the Canadian side, their argument is that they're targeted. So, for instance, with orange juice, 25% on Florida orange juice, but we get orange juice also from, I don't know how many other countries, maybe 12 or 16 other countries, Chile, Colombia, Mexico. So do you still think that the tariffs would be punitive on Canadians?
Yes, because what they're doing is all the imports, not only orange juice, but a lot of other products that we are importing for the U.S. will have a 25% tariffs. So we have inflation in our country right now that will, boost the inflation. If I'm pretty sure that when we will do our grocery this week, we will see the difference. And that being said, Don't forget that the former Prime Minister, Prime Minister Harper, did write a letter, in the National Post 2 weeks ago, and he said we must impose these tariffs. Yes, that will hurt our economy, that will hurt our consumers, but we must do that because our sovereignty is in danger, and we don't want to be the 51st state. And yes, I understand that we may enter in a recession because of that. So, I agree with him, and I agree with him that these tariffs are hurting us and Canadian consumers. But, for them, the 51st state is very serious, and we must protect our sovereignty. We are not in danger. Canada is a sovereign country and will stay a sovereign country. Trump is just saying that because he's having fun and he's trying to destabilize us for the negotiation with him that I hope will start as soon as possible.
So even now, you still don't take him seriously on this? You don't think he wants to annex the country? You're not taking that as a real threat?
No. The traditional politicians like Harper, Poilievre, Carney, Trudeau, they're using that to tell us, this country is a big danger. He won't do that military. What he wants to do actually is he wants to bring back in U.S. the manufacturing industry. I understand that. And so he wants our manufacturing industry to go in the U.S. and same thing for the manufacturing industry in Mexico. He wants them to go to U.S. But the way to answer that is to change our regulations, lower our taxes. We need to do more for our industry to be more productive. And the way to do that is we have too many regulations. We need to have a Dodge Canada, like I said, a department of downsizing. We need to cut the budget. We need to balance the budget in 1 year. We need to have a flat tax on business. We need to stop giving subsidies on businesses. We need to abolish the capital gains tax. We need to have a real free trade in our country. We can all do that. That will be the only right answer to Trump, because if we are doing that, that will be the biggest incentives for businesses to stay in Canada.
So you mentioned Doge. Who would you have run the Doge department in Canada?
I don't know, but it must be somebody with experience and maybe outside the government. I don't know, but it's important. And we must start by, cutting all the money that the Trudeau government gave to international aid, to promote the woke ideology or the DEI ideology. We must cut that, and we must cut all the international aid and save $8 billion. I've spoke about corporate subsidies that the federal government is giving to corporations. We can save $10 billion if we are cutting that. So we will be able, if we are serious, to balance the budget. And we need somebody coming from the outside of the government that will look at our expenses and give us, ideas. But I have a lot of ideas of what to do to be able to balance the budget.
Okay. So how did you feel about Danielle Smith and Kevin O'Leary going down to Mar-a-Lago? Was that more the approach you would like to see? Or, on the other side, we're seeing today Doug Ford enacting the tax on electricity going to the States.
Yeah. By doing that, we must know that the U.S. and the U.S. economy is 10 times bigger than us. So when they're doing that, they're not helping. Just we need to be calm, not reimpose any counter tariffs or doing things like that. And I don't agree with what Ford is doing in Ontario. I prefer what Danielle Smith did in the beginning of all that. She went down in the U.S. at a meeting with Trump, and we must have that. We must say to Trump, listen, we are ready. You want to renegotiate that? Let's do that right now. and would be able to start these negotiations. Actually, what Trump is doing right now, it is just because he thinks that it is in the best interest of Americans. But don't forget, these tariffs cannot be there for too long. He knows pretty well that these tariffs are creating inflation in the U.S. Look what the automobile industry did last week. Ford and GM, they went to Washington and they said to Trump, the impact of your tariffs on us will be $6,000 more for a car for American consumers. And that's why he decided to postpone that. Let's Trump tax his own people, and then the logic will come back home, and the American consumers will say, enough is enough. Trump said during the election, the electoral campaign, the presidential campaign, he said that his goal is to manage inflation, to increase the purchasing power of Americans. And by imposing tariffs, he's doing the opposite. So that's why we just don't have to impose counter tariffs, because it is us who are paying for that. And our economy is very weak right now. So that's why just be patient. The pressure will come from the U.S. and Trump will come at the table and we'll have a new deal.
So you would just do what? Nothing and just wait?
Nothing against the import coming from the U.S., but everything in Canada to have a more productive economy. Like I said before, we need to have a smaller government. We need to cut spending. We need to balance the budget. It would be good for Canadian consumers and our economy. Yeah, but that war, because what Trudeau did with Polyev and Carney, they started that trade war against the U.S. Let Trump impose tariffs on his own citizens, and the pressure will come from the U.S. like it happened with the automobile industry.
I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around that, though, when you say that Canada started the trade war, but it was Trump who fired the first shots.
Yeah, Trump decided to do that, and we must understand why. Like I said, he wants to bring back the manufacturing industry in U.S. So,
except that the manufacturing in our country with the auto industry we've always been integrated with the U.S. from the dawn of the auto industry. So while he says that we're ripping them off, I have trouble wrapping my head around that, because we've always just been partners from the time Henry Ford set up the first assembly lines, and you had cross-border trade between Windsor, Detroit.
That's why it would be very difficult for him to have our automobile industry going to the U.S. They said that to him. It's so integrated, and a move like that will cost a lot for the Americans. So that's why I believe that the common sense would prevail there. And also, when you said that, Trump, by imposing this tariff, actually, his goal is, when he's playing like that, I will impose 25% tariffs. Oh, no, I will postpone that for a month. He's playing with us, and, we don't have to do the same. And that's why, by doing the same, we are hurting more our own economy than the U.S. For the U.S., the Canadian market is nothing. So what we are telling them, we will impose tariff on all the imports coming from the U.S., but for a U.S. corporation or a U.S. business, maybe their products will be less competitive in our market. But that being said, they have a huge market in the U.S. and we don't. So by doing that, we are hurting our consumers and, not so much U.S. exporters.
Are you concerned about these new tariffs being imposed by China on Canada?
Yeah, but China, that is the answer coming from China with the tariff that we decided to impose on, cars coming from China, electric cars coming from China with 100% tariffs. We did that a couple of months ago, and now China is coming back with the tariff. So for me, it can be great if Canadian consumers can have electric cars that are not so expensive. But the federal government decided no, you won't be able to have electric cars that is less expensive than everything that is on the market.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing out in Western Canada in particular, and to some degree in Quebec, the reemergence of separatist movements because of all of this going on. What's your view with regard to that? How much of a concern is that?
But in Western Canada, in Alberta, they have a point there. I said that the People's Party of Canada is the last chance for our country, but I don't agree with them, they don't like the big fat government in Ottawa that government is telling Albertans what to do or what not to do. But I don't understand that they want to change that to have another big fat government in Washington. Maybe they will pay fewer taxes, but that would be their decision. But just the fact that Albertans are thinking about, the 51st state or the separation and being an independent country from Canada, that is telling me that there's a big problem with our confederation, with our country, and big problems that Poilievre and Carney don't want to answer. For the Western Canadians is the equalization formula that is unfair. And we are the only party that is saying we need to radically reduce the equalization payments. That must be fair for every province. And the fact that my own province in Quebec received equalization for the last 35 years, actually since 1957, and Quebec is not a poor province. The formula is unfair. We need to change that. We need to be less generous. And, nobody will speak about that. And also in Alberta, all the rules and the regulations against the oil and gas industry coming from Ottawa, they're fed up with that. The climate change agenda, Poilievre won't change that. Yeah, he won't impose the carbon tax, but it will be part of the Paris Accord. It will impose more regulations on businesses, that will be another cost for Canadian consumers. So they don't like the deal. Not the deal. The Confederation and our Constitution is great. They don't like the fact that, in Ottawa, they don't respect the Constitution. And that's why also in Quebec, you have the independentist movement, the PQ. If there's an election tomorrow in Quebec, the PQ will win. PQ will win. Why? Because of mass immigration. So with mass immigration, they are destroying the social fabric of our country. And Poilievre and Trudeau and Carney are okay with that. Poilievre said that, 250,000 foreigners every year in Canada is okay. I said, no, we need to have a pause on immigration until we fix the problems because of mass immigration. So put all that together, and I can understand why people out west are not so happy with the federal government, and they're looking for an alternative. But what I'm telling them, if you want real change in Canada, we are the party. If you read our platform, it's about 90% of our platform is the Reform Party of Canada, the platform of the Reform Party of Canada. And as you know, the Reform Party was very popular. So they just have to look at our platform. We are the only alternative for, a better country, a more productive economy, and lower taxes, and, a government that will respect taxpayers and respect the Constitution. But these separatist movements are there because of our, national politicians in Ottawa who don't want to do anything to solve the big problems.
Related to that, when I see correspondence coming from the PPC, everything these days seems focused on Trump, and people are even calling you Canada's Trump. Is that is that kind of where you want to be in terms of image going into the next election? Because everything that's emailed out that I see, it's like Trump, 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 and PPC all over it. It's as much about Trump as it is about you.
Yeah. First, I must say that, Trump is putting American first. He wants his country to be back of what it was a couple of years ago, make American great again. That is slogan, and that is what he's doing right now. But so for me, on that, yes, we want to put Canada first, like Trump wants to put America first. We want to be sure that Canadians, we will help our fellow citizens, Canadians, and not foreigners. But what Trump is doing right now in the U.S., if I can speak about the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, all that radical ideology, that's not part of the federal government anymore, and is fighting that cultural war. And also the transition of kids is fighting that, because there's no transition, there's only two sexes. And the fact that a biological male was able to play sport against the female and women, that was unfair, unjust, and he's changing that. But that being said, he is doing our policies. I spoke about that long time before him, when we created our party in 2018, 2019, all that was part of our platform. And Trump decided to do something about it. So I'm very happy that he's doing that. And yes, I'm supporting him on that. And we have the same policy on these subjects. So for me, when people are saying Bernier is the Canadian Trump, on these subjects, yes. And actually, I was thinking about that before Trump.
NATO, as part of your platform, I think you're calling for Canada to leave NATO. That seems like a pretty serious pivot for Canada.
I'm not saying that we must leave NATO, but for sure, Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, I'm the only one who was against that in the beginning, and since that time, now people who are saying that they are with Ukraine, actually what they are saying they are with the destruction of Ukraine, because Ukraine lost the war. That's the reality. So we must end that. And Trump and Putin had a deal on the table, for a peace deal that must be approved. And we are doing the opposite here in Canada. We did send $20 billion, money that we don't have, to Ukraine, a democracy, but a corrupt democracy. So I was against that, and now we are giving more money. Polyev was saying that we must give more money.
Well, I hear these accusations of corruption, but I don't see actual proof at this point. I see a lot of, I hate to accuse people of stealing money without actual proof, and I do see a lot of rhetoric and propaganda, flowing around on all sides. But I get very concerned about, especially when lives are at stake, accusations like that. So, I have to hold your feet to the fire on that one.
Yeah,
and ask for the proof.
But they were supposed to have an election in Ukraine a year ago.
No, because their constitution forbids it while you're in a state of war.
During state of war. But actually, if you have a democracy, and you must have an election at any time. In UK during the First and Second World War, they had election at that time also. So that being said, I don't like the fact that he's not having any elections. And
but it was a different time too. And now you're dealing with, hybrid warfare, fifth generation warfare, psyops, social media. And we are seeing even Canada under attack in that way. And it's concerning to me to see that the United States has suspended a lot of their cyber operations. It also concerns me in the way that Mr. Trump pulled the intelligence from Ukraine over the last few days. And as a result, I'd like your reaction to what we've seen in terms of this massacre that happened around Kursk and the civilians that were killed because they didn't have the intelligence to defend themselves and even shoot down incoming missiles.
Yeah, but actually, there's a deal on the table, and Zelensky doesn't want to have that ceasefire. So, if you want to stop that, just say yes to that ceasefire.
I didn't see Putin agreeing to it.
Putin said it. Actually, when the war started in 2022, February 2022, 2 months after that, Putin was ready to have a peace deal in Istanbul, and they had a peace deal at that time with the same condition that we have today. Putin wants to keep Crimea and Donbass, and he wants Ukraine to be a neutral country.
With his own installed dictator or his own installed puppet government, which is what he had prior to that with Yanukovych. So he doesn't want a neutral government. He wants his boy in there instead of somebody from the other side or someone neutral. And from what I'm seeing, Zelensky isn't the puppet of the United States because he's not bending the knee to Mr. Trump.
Yeah, what I'm saying about a neutral country, what I'm saying it's a country without any participation in NATO, a country that, won't have a NATO base at the door of Russia. Kennedy didn't want that in 1962 with the Cuban crisis. He sent to Khrushchev and the Soviet, I don't want you to have missiles at my doors. So, and we had an agreement at that time. And now the logic is not good for Putin. And if, actually the Ukraine is part of NATO, they will have a NATO base in Ukraine. And the worst of that, and I can understand Putin on that, in 2019, the U.S. government just decided not to participate anymore in the nuclear agreement with Russia. And so that means unilaterally, they decided not to follow that treaty anymore in 2019.
Because the Russians were refusing to allow verification.
Yeah, but that means that if Ukraine is part of NATO, they can have a NATO base in Ukraine, and on that base they can have nuclear missiles. So that's very dangerous. And actually, Trump is saying no. We want peace. We understand that logic was good for Kennedy. It must be good for you. So let's have that treaty. And I believe that Putin is ready for that. That was the same deal that he had on the table. We, Western country, told Zelensky in April 2022, don't sign that deal. And now, with all these debt, more than 500,000 Ukrainian deaths, and we have the same deal that was on the table 2 years ago. So let's be serious about that and end that war.
Well, I'm not really in alignment with you on it, as you can tell. And what did you say about Khrushchev?
Yeah, he decided not to have the missiles. The deal built missiles base
after the fall of the Soviet Union and the reunification of Germany. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm speaking about Khrushchev during the 1962.
Oh, okay.
The missile crisis, they wanted to have missiles in Cuba, and Kennedy said, no, I don't want missiles at my doors. And so, but the other thing also about the reunification of East Berlin and West Berlin, as you know, the Berlin Wall was destroyed in 1989, but in 1990, we the West to reunify Eastern Berlin and Western Berlin. And at that time, the Soviets said, okay, we are okay with that, but with one condition. And the condition was for NATO not to do any expansion in the East. And we never followed that. We just, and now there's a lot of countries, former Eastern Europe countries are part of NATO, contrary to what we said in 1990 that we won't have any expansion. And now the last one is Georgia and Ukraine. That's crazy. We must not do that. And actually, I was part of this negotiation. In 2008, I was Foreign Affairs Minister for Harper, and I was in Bucharest, Romania, and we had the NATO summit at that time. And that decision was to start the negotiation for Georgia and Ukraine to be part of NATO. And Russia said, I cannot allow that. We don't want a NATO base just at our doors. And we said, oh, no, that's not important. And now we have that war. The way to end that is for Ukraine to be neutral. But I agree with you. If Ukraine is neutral, maybe they will elect, a president that would be pro-Russia or pro-West. But at least it would be neutral because they won't be part of NATO.
And again, I don't agree with your assessment of what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union, and the not 1 inch further east was a reference really to what was going on inside Germany, because they didn't want a re-Nazified Germany. And so the agreement was really to not put NATO troops or missiles into East Germany, which has been honored since then. And the document that is cited by the Russian media, or to be polite, is a memo from James Baker. There's no document that was ever signed to agree to that. I don't know how deep you want to get into this today. I didn't really mean to get off into the weeds with you on this, but as I'm listening to you, it sounds very, very pro-Russian, and we just had a lot of people slaughtered overnight because of what Donald Trump did. And it looks like he's really pivoting in a very dramatic and unprecedented way, and destabilizing our relationships with our allies over this, in a war that we were told wouldn't affect us at all. But I see that it really, truly is, even having an impact here in Canada right now.
I'm not pro-Ukraine. I'm not pro-Russia. I'm pro our country, Canada, and I'm pro-peace. So we don't have anything to lay over there. And I know that you can have a peace, and I know that Trump is working on that. And I hope that Ukraine will accept that. If not, the death will go on. And you're right about that. We must stop that. But, there's no peace agreement right now. And Ukraine said they're not ready to sign any peace agreement. Maybe they will be ready in a year, or in a month, or in a day. But, they will pay the cost because they're losing the war. That's the reality. And so,
well, especially when you're the United States, which made promises to provide support, just overnight turns off the switch so that they're blinded, blindfolded, and have their arms tied behind their backs so that the Russians can move in and flank them and then slaughter them in the middle of the night, and then allow missiles to be fired at them and leave them pretty much defenseless, because even the F-16s that they have are kind of neutered because they can't access the guidance systems to shoot down the incoming missiles. And I think that's inhumane and cruel, frankly.
So what you're saying, like me, this was a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. That was the Ukraine was able to do that war because they had the support of the U.S. So now the U.S. said, that's it. That's it. I don't want to participate anymore. And you have Ukraine saying, no, I want to go on. So just,
Well, I don't see it, Max. I don't see it as a proxy war. I see it as Ukrainians, like everyday citizens, trying to defend their homes and trying to defend the borders of their country, which, after the Budapest Memorandum, was supposed to be protected by Russia, the UK, and the United States. And one country violated that, and that is Russia. And Ukraine gave up the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, in order to try to achieve peace back then. And they've had nothing but trouble since, because they've been weakened. And by giving up their position of strength, now they're in a position of weakness and at the mercy not just of Russia now, but also apparently at the mercy of Donald Trump, who has changed sides.
Yeah, but not only him. Look at some European countries. In France, last weekend, Marine Le Pen, and she may be the next president, she said Ukraine must be neutral. Ukraine must not be part of EU. So, sorry about that, but that's us, Western countries, including European countries, who push that war. Without us, Ukraine, we must look at the logic right now. He doesn't have any support anymore. He's losing the war. He lost these two territories. Let's end that like that. We don't want Russia to go up to more, taking more territories in Ukraine. If you don't want that, you must be able to have that peace that is on the table. That what Trump said, he did have a negotiation with Putin. They did have a negotiation, and that's the deal that is on the table
It
right
does sound
now.
like a very good deal when Donald Trump is on the one hand saying, we'll protect you maybe, but not going to guarantee it as long as you give us your precious rare earth minerals. And then on the other side, you've got the other guy who wants to take your country in the other way. It doesn't leave the Ukrainians with much wiggle room here. I think what's really happening is you've got a protection racket going on, and they're beating Ukraine into submission because now Donald Trump has decided to go with the other gangster on the other side. It doesn't seem very, very peace-like to me.
Yeah, but we won't agree on that.
Sure.
Peace is always better than wars. And, maybe that won't be the best deal for Ukraine, but we have a deal there. We need to stop that. And Russia is ready to stop that at their conditions. I agree with that because they won the war. So that's what is happening right now.
And I don't think that it's going to result in peace, frankly. It's destabilizing Europe, what Donald Trump is doing. By, now Europe doesn't trust the United States at all anymore. They're arming up. We're going to see a buildup of arms in Europe as a result of that. And the Ukrainians, and from what I'm seeing over there, they're not going to give up, regardless of what happens. They've been fighting for their independence since long before World War II. So I wish it wasn't like that.
In Donbass and Crimea, people who are living there are speaking Russia. They want.
Well, that's because Joseph Stalin moved Russian-speaking people in, and the Ukrainians all ran away when the Russians invaded in 2014, which is being characterized in a different way on the Russian side. But it's the Russians who sent in soldiers without insignias on and armed the separatist rebels, which also makes me concerned because as they were naming the people's republics up there as part of that really was a civil war that was facilitated and enabled by Russia. I see separatist movements over here too, and that concerns me even just a little bit to see that kind of thing and kind of a mirror image sort of happening here. I hope it never comes to that here in Canada, but I don't like to see the destabilization.
Yeah, but speak about referendum. We have two referendums in Quebec, one in 1995. All that was done peacefully, and maybe we'll have another referendum because the leader of the PQ said, if I'm winning, a year after my victory, I will do another referendum based on the independence, and you have Western Canada. So, this country was built on a promise to have an economic union in 1867 to be the opposite of the U.S., to keep all the colonies together. And we didn't have that economic union after more than 150 years. So economically, it's not a well-functioning country when, you are exporting to the U.S., in Quebec, in other provinces. That we need to fix that. And we said that 8 years ago. If you don't fix that, you have the separatist movement in out west and in Quebec. And I must tell you that I voted for the BQ. I voted for the referendum, yes, in 1995, because I wanted at that time to send a strong signal to the federal government for them to respect our constitution. I didn't want Quebec to be an independent country, but I want Quebec to have the autonomy that it is in the constitution. And so we need, if we don't respect our constitution, if we don't give all the autonomy, and if we need to stop the federal government to interfere in provincial jurisdiction, if we don't do that, yeah, maybe Alberta will be the 51st state and Quebec will be an independent country. But that's why I'm saying the People's Party is the only hope to keep that country together. And if not, people will have to decide.
Is that the same kind of logic you apply? Because what did I hear you say the other day? Putin is not our enemy. Our government is our enemy, or your enemy. Can you explain that?
Yeah, actually, it's our government. My government didn't allow me to travel freely across this country during COVID-19. and I was not able to do that. My government didn't respect our Charter of Rights during COVID-19. My government is spending money that we don't have and creating inflations, and now everybody must pay what the inflation tax that is about 5%. My government is giving money to Ukraine that we don't have instead of helping Canadians. My government is giving money to foreign aid. So my government is not working for the benefit of Canadians. And so Russia, for me, is not the enemy of our standard of living. It is my own government.
So it just seems to me like that's a pretty strong word, enemy. The Canadian government is our enemy. Or are you referring like Justin Trudeau or now Mark Carney and the Liberals are our enemy? Is it that got like, how do you, as a Canadian, I'm like, a Liberal is not my enemy. He's my neighbor is the way I've always kind of looked at it. Right. And hopefully vice versa, so that we solve these things through democracy. I've just never thought about my political opponent in a democratic process as being my enemy. And certainly Putin, who I have real concerns about when it comes to things like the Bucha massacre and war crimes, cutting off people's ears, right? Like stuff like that to concern me.
Putin is a dictator, a murderer. Yeah, for sure. Actually, that's the fact. And you're right about that. But also Russia is our neighbors, like U.S. So when I'm saying that, it's an answering a question about, now here, in politics in Canada, your enemy must be Russia and we must have a war with Russia. I don't want that. So I'm saying Russia is not my enemy, is our neighbors. I don't like what they're doing. But, our goal is, our tradition as a country is for peacekeeping and not fights. And we didn't participate in the Iraq war. The participation in the Afghanistan war was a big mistake. Actually, we didn't change anything after, 15 years. So I'm for peace. So I don't want to have an enemy, and Russia is not our enemy. But answering that question, I said my government did a lot of things to me that I didn't like an enemy. Oh, yes. But I want a government that will work for his people, and they're not doing that. And my government did not do that. And now the leaders, the two leaders, Poilievre and Carney, don't have policies that will put me first and work for me as a Canadian.
So how's the PPC set for the next election, which I guess most people are expecting will come sooner rather than later? Are you in good shape that way?
Yes, actually, yes. We have up to now about 300 candidates selected and approved. So that's a good news. Our goal is to have a full slate of candidates. So we need to have about 43 more candidates. We are working on that. And actually, yes, I'm working to be sure that our team across the country will be ready. That's what I'm doing right now. And I can tell you, if the election is called maybe next week, we will be ready. We will be there. And our goal is to be able to participate in the national debates. We still have a chance, a very small one, but we'll do everything to be able to participate in these leaders' debates, because we are very different. And if they want to have a real debate, they need to have the People's Party there. And we are offering a very different options than the Liberals and the Conservative. So I'm looking forward for that election. I think that we can do well. We'll see. But we have good candidates across the country that are ready to fight for Canadians.
Which brings me to just this last portion of our interview. I had Grant Abraham on the program a couple of times. The last time he was here, he suggested that you and he might come on together at some point to have a broader discussion and maybe even a debate here. Would you be open to doing something like that with him from the United Party of Canada? Or maybe another candidate?
I know him. I had a meeting with him personally a couple of months ago in Manitoba, if I remember well. And we are open. If he wants to discuss with us, I'm open with that. Actually, I know that he's starting to build a new political party at the federal level. I will wish him, good luck. and big success if you want. I don't know he's running on which ideas and what kind of platform. I don't know if platform. So that's why I cannot tell you if I'm supporting what he's doing politically. I don't know a little bit more. So he knows our platform. Everything is on our website. Everybody can read our platform, People's Party of Canada.ca, and they can click on platform. But before doing anything with him, I will need to know what he's doing and what he's fighting for.
Sure. Yeah. So I told him when I spoke to him last that if I have Max back on the program, I'll ask him if he would be open to doing it, because that was something Grant had suggested. So I'll contact him, and maybe we'll get you guys together, or maybe some other candidates as well. I certainly would like to. I think it would be a very interesting and helpful discussion to have the two of you come on and discuss these issues at length. So, and then I can kind of step back and be more of a moderator. Max, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out the interview today?
No, I'm very pleased. Thank you very much. I like what you're doing, and I like the fact that we can have a robust discussion.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And so I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity today.
And thank you for everything you do. And I mean, you are offering a real alternative to the other parties in this upcoming election. Everybody, Maxime Bernier, I will be right back on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I am back. That gets us to the top of the hour, and with that, I think we are probably ready to wrap up for the night. I have no chat over here. I have to go look over there, but because it is the top of the hour, I'm just going to kind of fade away this evening. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and sharing your time with me here. I'll be back at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Now, we do have a special guest coming on tomorrow with another perspective on what's going on in Ukraine. We have an interview coming directly from Ukraine, the capital, tomorrow. So tune in for that. We're going to get a first-hand account, a personal account of what it's like to live over there in these very trying and dark times. All of that happening while these peace talks, such as they are, get underway. And with that, I will leave you with Cosmo, Free Dog. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Well, I heard old Cosmo howling last night up on the hill where the moon shines so bright. He was singing a tune, lonesome dogs cry about freedom, running and touching the sky. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. Cosmo's got them paws that just itch to roam. He's chasing his dreams, he's far from home. With a heart full of love looking back, he's got his path to tread. With every step, he's leaving his path. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmos Run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. And maybe one day, when you're feeling low, you'll find your own freedom and let your spirit go. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. In his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a bird, a heart full of love and a spirit so free. He's living his life wild and carefree. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard a bird. Cosmos on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.